good morning and welcome to Yin Yoga this morning. So if this is your first experience of Yin Yoga, I'd just like to clarify a few things that maybe, people perhaps don't understand. Yin Yoga is a very different practice to other styles of what's generally known as Hatha Yoga. So you're probably familiar with the concept of yin and yang, the Taoist philosophy of the world being full of opposites, so night and day, hot and cold, those sorts of things. And within our own sort of lives, we have times when we're very active and we have times when we're more passive. And so Yin Yoga focuses more on the passive side of things. So when we're doing a Hatha yoga practice, it's a bit more active and dynamic and strong, strength building, whereas in Yin it's a much slower practice, and all the poses are on the ground, so there won't be any standing poses, and that means that we're then just allowing the muscles to relax. So throughout the practice, and we will be maintaining the postures for about 3 minutes each. So during the practice, you want to bring your attention to the body and just allow that release and relaxation to take place. So I've got a little timer thing here, which is set up, should be set up for 3 minutes. I need to just change that quickly. There we go, okay. And you will hear at the end of the 3 minutes that sort of sound, which is sort of a gong-like sound, and then that's just an indication that the 3 minutes has come to an end. Now, there's nothing magic about 3 minutes. It's a time that I find most people can manage okay. Now, there might be some poses where after a minute and a half you're thinking, oh, this is horrendous. And so please, if you're experiencing any extreme discomfort, then move yourself out of the pose, or maybe take one of the supports. If you don't have yoga blocks, books make a good alternative. It might just be a case of bringing in a prop to help you in that pose. So I hope that's okay for everyone. I've just got to change something quickly on the computer to get rid of, so I can see you all. Okay, so I have got you up on my big TV screen here, so you might see me looking up towards the heavens. But actually, I'm just looking at you guys on the big screen because it's too small on the laptop. Obviously, I can't come and adjust you. I might perhaps give a verbal cue if I think somebody's looking very uneven or something that may be dangerous. So I hope that's enough explanation of the Yin Yoga. If you've got questions or feedback or whatever, please do email me after the session, or we'll have a little catch up before we say our final farewells. So you all seem to be sitting in a nice comfortable position here, so let's start in our cross-legged easy pose. So just letting. And sometimes it's nice to sit yourself onto a block or a brick or something to just adjust the position of the hips. So you've got a slight forward tilt of the hips, and that helps to keep the spine, to show you here, keep the spine in a nice neutral position. Sometimes when we're sitting flat on the floor, we're more in this kind of position. If you find that you're feeling you're having to hold your legs up, then even in this pose, you could maybe bring a cushion or block or something to rest under the thumbs. So getting yourselves nice and comfortable, and then maybe taking the opportunity to just let your eyes gently close. And starting to draw your awareness inwards. And feeling the movement of the breath as it flows in and out through the nostrils. Noticing that energy coming into the body with your inhalation, Noticing how the body just naturally releases as you exhale. And sometimes it's nice to have some sort of a visualization here. So as you inhale, imagine the energy flowing up through the spine. And then as you exhale, feeling that energy flowing out from the crown of the head and releasing down over the whole body. And about 1 more minute remaining. Coming to the end of the pose. So just starting to slowly open up the eyes, maybe lifting the head up, a little bit of movement of the head, releasing any tension from the neck. Perhaps looking side to side, just taking gentle movements here. Good. And then we're going to come up onto all fours. And again, just a little bit of movement here to loosen up the spine. So coming onto hands and knees, into a cat position. And then from here we're going to gently inhale, lifting the head up, and then exhaling, dropping the head, rounding through the back. And again, as you inhale, letting the spine drop down, and as you exhale, releasing down, rounding the spine. So just in your own time, with your breath, just taking a few more moves like that. And then one more round, finishing up on an exhalation. And then bringing yourself to a neutral spine position, so there's neither an arch nor a roundness of the spine. And then we're going to come into a frog pose for our first yin pose. So bringing your big toes together, opening the knees out nice and wide here, resting the bottom to the heels, and letting the head come down to the mat. Now, some options here for modification. If you have got pain in your knees, it may help you if you bring a cushion underneath your thighs or a rolled up blanket. If the head doesn't reach to the floor, perhaps you could bring a pillow or a blanket to rest your head onto. So just take a little bit of time here to find whatever modifications you need for this pose. And then trying to find stillness once you're into the pose. And just allowing that release of the muscles and the connective tissue to take place. So during the yin practice, we're not really looking for any muscular strength. We want the muscles to release, and that allows the body then to release the connective tissue, which is what holds all the muscles and the bone structure together, and allowing that to lengthen And that's how we allow energy to flow freely through the body. So we're coming up to about halfway through the pose here now. Noticing perhaps where you feel areas of compression in the body, where you're feeling areas of extension. Usually in this pose you may feel a bit of opening up in the groin area, perhaps lengthening through the spine. If you have your arms out in front of you, you may be feeling a little bit of extension through the shoulders. And remember, there's no right or wrong here, just finding the best pose for you today. And there's half a minute more remaining in the pose, but if you need to come out of it, please feel free to take whatever alternative pose might work for you. And that's the end of the pose here, so taking it very slowly as you transition, coming back up onto all fours, and then just adjusting the knees back underneath the hips. If you've been using a blanket, just move that out of the way. And we're going to come into probably what's going to be the most dynamic of all the yin poses, which is the downward facing dog. So in hatha you would do this with straight legs, but in yin we want to keep the knees bent. So the yin version of downward dog is like this, with bent knees. And maybe here, just to one at a time, release out through the legs. Have a little bit of movement here. And then gently releasing the knees back down. So coming back into your tabletop position. And then we're going to move into a dragon pose. So for this one, stepping your right foot forwards to the outside of the right hand. And then you might want to bring a cushion or a blanket underneath that knee at the back. If you're on a carpeted floor, you might be okay. I'm on a hard floor here, so I'm going to protect my knee with a cushion. And try to keep the head into a neutral position. So you're not looking up nor all the way down or side to side, just keeping the head nice and neutral. And here we are finding probably extension through this hip flexor of the left leg, maybe a little bit of opening up of the groin area on the right side, if you've got the right foot forwards. And we're coming up to the end of the first minute here. So in this pose, I like to give you a variation, which you are welcome to take or not, entirely up to you, which is bringing it into a twist by taking the right hand onto the right knee and then just gently twisting through the torso so you're looking over the right shoulder. And just noticing here how that influences the sensations that you feel in the body. So when I do this, and it might not be the same for you, I find that increases that stretch through my back hip flexor, the left thigh. And by applying just a tiny bit of pressure of the hand onto the knee, If you want to, then you get a slightly deeper stretch through the groin. But that may be too much for some, so take it to whatever level is feeling good for you today. And that's the second minute gone, so if you are enjoying the twist, staying there. If you find that's maybe getting a bit much, then just bring the right hand back down to the floor. So no right or wrong, just taking whichever version seems right for you. And about half a minute more to go of this pose. And coming to the end of the pose, so bringing the knee back underneath the hips. And then just going to come back up into that inversion of downward dog, so tucking the toes under. And again, you might want to take the option here just to walk the legs out a little bit, or just come into a still version of the pose with the knees bent, keeping the head nice and relaxed. Just staying here for as long or as short a time as you want. I'm probably going to be here for another 15 to 20 seconds, or just resting down onto your knees. And then coming back down, and then coming into our dragon on the other side. So stepping forwards with the left foot now. And if you're using a support under the knee, taking that under the back knee as you find your dragon pose on the other side. And maybe noticing perhaps the experience is a little bit different on this side. So whenever we're in the asymmetrical poses, we may not necessarily find it's exactly the mirror image of the other side of the body, because we're all quite different from one another and from one side of the body to the other. So that's 1 minute gone so far, so inviting you, if you would like, to come into the twist version by bringing the hand to the knee. So you're probably finding there's quite a lot of weight going down through that right arm, which is fixed to the floor. So this is actually really good for the strengthening of the skeleton, the bone structure. So instead of doing workouts with weights, we're just using the weight of the body to strengthen the bones here. And then that's another minute gone, so you could stay in your twist, or you could come back to the center again. For those of you that are quite flexible in the hips and have maybe done Yin Yoga with me before, you may want to take an option here to come all the way down onto your elbows, or you could perhaps bring a block or a book to rest the elbows onto, and that may bring you into a slightly deeper stretch through the hips if that's what you're looking for, but don't go there if that's not going to be appropriate for you today. Down to 5 or 6 seconds remaining. And then slowly, slowly bringing the knee back underneath the hips. And then one last time coming into the Yin version of Downward Dog. So either moving or keeping the legs still. Finding a bit of a release through the back and the shoulders. So we would never hold this pose for too long, so just letting the knees come back down to the floor. And then we're going to come onto our tummies. So just walk your hands forwards as you release down to the floor. And coming here into a Sphinx pose. So for this one, elbows want to be more or less underneath your shoulders. So the positioning of your elbows will dictate how much of a back bend you're bringing the spine into. So if you're happy to have a fairly intense back bend, you can bring the elbows in close. If you would rather go for a lower, softer back bend, then just let the elbows release out. So maybe experimenting a little bit here, finding whatever's the most appropriate modification. And then once you've settled into the pose, just see if you can feel where you're getting the maximum compression in the spine. So with the vertebrae stacked one on top of the other, we're opening out the front edge of the vertebrae and pressing the back edges in together. And again, that strengthens the bone structure, and it also allows space for the discs to be kept nice and moist, allowing the moisture to flow in, fill up that space. And that's about halfway through the pose here. So again, a modification for those of you that know that your back is quite flexible and you'd like to take it a little bit deeper, there's the option here to walk the hands in, lifting the elbows up and coming up into a seal pose. But just notice here your breathing. So if you find that the breathing is becoming a bit heavy, laboured, then that's probably an indication that you're overdoing it a bit, which I think is not good for my back, so I'm going to come all the way back down again. But if you're happy to stay there, then stay up into the seal. And there's about half a minute more to go. Coming to the end of the pose. So resting here by letting the elbows open out to the side and just dropping the head down so you've got one cheek resting onto the mat. Just finding the release here through the spine, which we've been flexing and compressing here. Allowing the spine to return to its neutral position. And then our next pose is going to be a shoulder compression. So for this one, you might like to have a small cushion at the ready to support underneath your head. And we're going to bring the right hand in front, so stretch out with the right hand and then sliding the left arm underneath the right arm and then resting the head onto the cushion so you feel that support for the neck. I'm actually going to show you on the other side because it's maybe not so clear. When I'm turned away. So we've now got the weight of the body pressing down into that lower shoulder. So just be careful here that you don't find you're getting pins and needles in your fingers. If that's the case, then you probably just need to make a little bit of an adjustment, as you might have just trapped a nerve here. Okay, that's 1 minute gone so far. Maybe you can find a little bit of space to inch the fingertips maybe a millimetre further away from you. Maybe not. And another minute to go. But of course you're welcome if there's too much for this, then just come back to lying into a relaxed position on your tummy. If you're happy to stay here for the remainder of the pose, then do so. And about half a minute more to go. At the end of the pose, just sliding the left arm back out underneath you. And I'm going to ask you just to come back into that Sphinx pose for a moment or two, because I'm going to demonstrate the next one for you. My regulars will know what's coming, but it's a bit complicated to explain. So watch it first before I take you into the pose. So for this one, we're going to stretch out the arm that was underneath before. So I think for most people that should be the left arm. And then we're going to roll the body over, so you're lying onto your left hip. Bend that right leg and just plant it down here to give you some support. And then again, you need to bring the cushion to rest the head onto. And then the other arm can come back behind. It might join up with the fingers here. If it doesn't, then just bring it behind the back. And we're aiming here now for an opening up through the heart. So I will talk you through that. So lying onto the tummy first, stretch out with the left arm perpendicular to the body. And then just roll yourself over onto the left hip and bending the right knee, plant it down behind you, bring your cushion to support the head, and then swinging the right arm over the back. So squeezing the shoulder blades together here. Either just allow the hand to hang here, or maybe joining up with the other fingers, or if that's not going to be possible, then you can just let it release behind. So whichever of those is going to work for you. So the main intention of this pose is to squeeze shoulder blades and open up through the heart center. And this is probably one of the least comfortable of the yin poses, but it's really good as an antidote to sitting on a computer all day long with your shoulders hunched. So we can think of it as our penance for all those hours we spend on the computer. Coming up to about halfway through the pose. About half a minute more to go, or if that's too much, just rolling back onto your tummy at any point. And then slowly, if you're not already there, just rolling yourself back onto your tummy. And then in between these poses, I like to just interlink the fingers, drop the forehead down onto the fingertips, and that just allows the shoulders to relax. Allowing the body to do all the recovery activity from the stresses of the pose. And then preparing for the shoulder compression pose. So we're going to take now the left hand stretched out in front of you, and then the right one sliding underneath, pressing the head down onto your cushion. So feeling here that opening up through the lower shoulder. Extending out with the left shoulder. Opening up the spaces between the shoulder blades where we've been compressing a moment before. And about halfway through the pose here. About half a minute more to go. So we're going to transition into that other slightly more complicated pose. So I'll just talk you through it here. So take your lower arm, the right arm, and slide it out to the other side of your body, stretching it out perpendicular to the body, and then rolling yourself over onto the right hip, and then bringing the left leg to plant behind the right leg just for stability in the lower body, and then the top arm swings over the back, squeezing the shoulder blades together and either hanging there or catching hold of the hand or just bending the elbow to rest the arm behind the back and aiming for that squeeze through the shoulder blades. And we're halfway through the pose here. And about another half a minute to go. So slowly transitioning out of the pose, rolling back onto your tummy. And then just move the cushion out of the way, interlink the fingers, resting forehead onto the fingertips, elbows released out to the side, just finding release here through the spine, the shoulders. Again, where we've been compressing and squeezing fluid out, we're now allowing that to flow back in, replenishing the joints. And then we're going to slowly transition back up onto all fours again. And then I just just like to have a little bit of movement in between the poses here. Maybe a circling of the hips one way, and then around the other way. And then let's come into a swan pose next. In fact, no, changing my mind, we're going to come into a melting heart pose, or sometimes we call this a prayer pose. So you're going to bring your hands about a foot forward of your shoulders, and then drop the head down until it comes to rest either onto the mat or onto a cushion or a block or something, so that the head is supported. So this is the upper body. This is a similar position to how we were in the downward facing dog, which gives our body a bit of an inversion because our hips are up higher than our heart level. So this means that the internal organs are now floating about in the abdominal cavity, the chest cavity, and just giving them a little bit of respite from the feeling of gravity constantly dragging them downwards. It also gives a nice stretch out to the shoulders, which we've been compressing in the previous pose. But as always, if you're finding this is a bit too extreme, you're welcome to take a modification. Perhaps an alternative to this might just be resting into a child pose. If you're still with me, maybe another minute to go here. And half a minute more. Just coming now into a child pose if you're not there already. You can either have the knees together or knees slightly apart, sitting the bottom back down to the heels, and then the hands can either come in front to rest the head onto the hands, or maybe bring the hands alongside your feet and resting the head to the floor or onto a cushion or blanket. Just taking this as a transition pose for about a minute or so. Giving the body time to rest and recover. And finding the internal organs a little bit squeezed in here, where they've been floating around freely before. To the end of the pose here, so just slowly lifting yourselves up So you come to sitting on your heels. Now, for some people that might feel a bit uncomfortable under your legs, so you might want to bring a blanket under the knees or under the ankles. Perhaps if it's a bit too much for your knees, you've got the option of cushion or something under the buttocks, or perhaps sitting onto a book or a block or something. So just finding, we're not going to be in this pose for too long. If it's really uncomfortable, just sit with your legs extended out in front of you. But you'll notice here, my back's in a nice neutral position, so it's quite hard to slump in this pose, believe it or not. So when the spine's nicely aligned, it's a good opportunity for a twist. So we're going to take a twist here by bringing the right hand over to the left knee, and then just let the left hand drop behind, maybe touching your toes, and then turning to look over that left shoulder. And then releasing back to the center, and then taking it over to the other side. And releasing back to the center. Maybe another 15 seconds or so here. Just keeping a nice neutral position of the spine and the head. Coming towards the end of the pose. And then you can release the legs out in front of you. Perhaps rest the hands behind, so you can just give the legs a little bit of a shake out. So when we're sitting in that ankle pose with the feet tucked underneath, we're constricting the flow of blood through the legs. So when we come out of it, it's nice to let that blood flow down through the veins, and it's supposed to stop you getting varicose veins. Okay, so I'm going to turn towards you, but you stay where you were. So we're going to come to a half butterfly pose now. So tucking your right leg in. In fact, I'll mirror you. Tuck your right leg in. And then you might find you need to rest a pillow or a blanket or something under that thigh if you find the knee feels like it's hanging too much up. And then just letting yourself release down over the extended leg. So keeping the upper body nice and relaxed, keeping the elbows and the shoulders relaxed, keeping the neck relaxed. If you need to, perhaps just releasing tension out of the neck area by a little bit of movement of the head. Just finding a nice gentle forward fold here. So remember, there's no active muscles in a yin pose, so we're not trying to activate the hamstring like we might do in a hatha class. So just keeping the foot nice and relaxed. And just allowing the body to yield into that forward fold. And we're about halfway through the pose here. So perhaps you may have found that the muscles have released a little bit. Perhaps the fingertips might just edge a millimetre or two further down the leg. Not forcing anything, just finding the pose that feels right for you. About 30 seconds remaining. And starting to come out of the pose, walking the hands back up the leg, slowly bring yourself upright. Okay, so just stay as you are for a moment and watch me set up for the next one. So you can keep the leg position the same, but you'll need something behind your back. So I'm going to turn sideways on. So if you've got a long pillow, you could use a long pillow or a rolled up blanket or something, and maybe something to rest the head onto, because we're going to come into a back bend now. So get your props and things at the ready. And then slowly releasing onto your back, maybe resting first onto the elbows for a moment or two. And then whenever you're ready, perhaps releasing all the way down. And you can either rest the head onto a cushion, or if you like, have a bit of an opening up through the throat here, which will intensify that arch through the back. You could just rest the head onto the floor. If you want to go a little bit deeper, then maybe bringing the arms overhead. Again, that will give you a greater arch through the back. So don't take it that far if that's not feeling appropriate for you. Or maybe you could start on the elbows and slowly modify as you go. And now we should be allowing the front of the body to extend and release. Just noticing if you're squeezing the muscles in the abdomen, perhaps consciously bringing the awareness to the belly, letting those muscles release. Feeling the chest and the heart center opening up. Perhaps feeling opening through the right groin. About another minute to go here. Coming towards the end of the pose. So if your spine still onto the back, very slowly bring yourselves up onto your elbows, making the transition nice and gentle, and then pushing into the hands as you slowly bring yourself up all the way to sitting, and then just let that leg release out. Maybe rest the hands behind. Again, you might want to shake the legs out a little or move the feet. And then we're going to come into the half butterfly on the other side. So tucking your left leg in there, keeping the right leg extended as you find your forward folds here. So again, just let the hands rest either on the leg or perhaps alongside the leg, trying to keep no tension through the arms and the shoulders, keeping the neck and the head nice and relaxed. You might want to support underneath that left thigh. If you find the thighs up quite high, just taking whatever modifications and props is going to make the pose work best for you. And that's halfway through the pose. About half a minute more to go. So Jill, just let me see your elbows soften a little bit there. And that might mean a little bit less tension going through to the shoulders and the neck. Coming towards the end of the pose now. And starting to walk the hands back in. And then hopefully you should have your props and things ready behind you now from the previous back bend. So releasing down onto the elbows first, transitioning very slowly from a forward bend to a back bend. We don't want any sudden movements in Yin. And then whenever feels appropriate, maybe releasing all the way down to the back, or you could stay with the hands, with it, elbows holding your body weight. Or if you want to go deeper, then reaching the arms into that overhead position. And again, one side might feel different to the other. Just be aware of the sensations that you're feeling in your body. Be kind to your body. Brought you this far. And once again, bringing the awareness to the abdominal area, so see if there's tension being stored up here, whether we can let that just release out. Feeling the chest opening up, the body yielding into the floor. about half a minute more to go. And slowly coming onto your elbows. And then gradually making the transition to upright again. Releasing the left leg out. And just maybe come to that resting position with the hands supporting behind. And just stay like that for a minute while I demonstrate the final pose, which is going to be a twist. So I want to move these blocks and things out of the way there. I'm going to have a cushion ready on this side. So watch me first if you're not sure what you're going to do. So we've got two options here. Actually, you could either cross your knees and then release the legs over to the side. Well, that might be a bit too intense for some, so then you might want to keep the knees uncrossed and perhaps bring a pillow between the knees and then just drop them over to the side and then bring whatever cushions or pillows to rest onto. Upper body, doesn't really matter where you put your hands, just somewhere that's going to feel fairly stable. Now, for some people, you might find you're rolling a bit onto one side, so perhaps then you might want to bring another cushion or a pillow under the opposite shoulder to where your knees are, if that makes sense. So, I'll start the timer going. So come onto your backs, and then bending the knees in, and then either taking the option to cross, let's start with the right knee first, the right knee over the top, or keeping a pillow in between the two knees, and then just letting the knees drop over towards the left side until they rest down onto either the floor or whatever cushions or blocks you might have put underneath. And then just finding a nice position for the hands. Sometimes it's nice to rest the left hand onto that right knee, or just have the hands resting out to the side. And then just finding a nice neutral position for the head. You don't need to turn it to one side or the other. Just finding stable position, keeping the neck nice and neutral here. And about another minute remaining here. Coming to another 10 seconds or more to go. And then slowly rolling back onto your backs. Maybe just if you've got the legs crossed, uncrossing the leg, perhaps Perhaps just hugging the knees into the chest and give yourself a bit of a rock side to side here to release the spine. And then we're going to take the same position on the other side. So if you're using pillow in between the knees, taking that option. Or if you have the legs crossed, this time it's left crossed over the top of the right. And then just letting the knees drop over to the right side, supporting with whatever cushions you may need. Finding your stable position of the upper body. And perhaps noticing one side of the body may not be the same as the other. But don't let your inner critic tell you you're doing it wrong. It's all good. About another minute remaining in the pose. Coming to the end of the pose here. And slowly rolling back onto your back. Again, you might just want to uncross the legs and bend the knees in, perhaps hugging your knees. Giving yourself a little rock side to side. And then preparing for our final pose, the Shavasana, the corpse pose. So just resting the legs out. Either keeping the legs straight, or if that's causing you any pain in your back, you might want to bring a pillow or a rolled up towel or something under the legs. You may want to bring another blanket over the top of you because you may cool down a bit in this. Just letting the hands open out to the side, finding that nice relaxed position for the body. So you can stay here as I come upright to guide you through the relaxation. So feeling that connection of the body and the floor. Noticing the points where the body meets the floor, back of the head, shoulder blades, backs of the arms, the hips and pelvis, backs of the legs, heels. Feeling the body resting on the floor, being held and supported by the floor. enabling the whole body to relax. Relaxing the toes, insteps, ankles, relaxing the calves, knees, thighs, relaxing hips, pelvis, and buttocks, feeling the lower body completely relaxed. Relaxing the abdomen, rib cage, and the chest. Relaxing the shoulders, the spine, the whole of the torso, completely relaxed. Relaxing the arms, elbows, wrists and hands. Relaxing the neck, the jaw, the tongue, the teeth. Relaxing the eyes, the cheeks, the forehead, temples, crown of the head, the whole of the body completely relaxed. Bringing the awareness to the breath, feeling cool air flowing in through the nostrils, bringing fresh energy, fresh oxygen into the body. Feeling the energy filling your heart and lungs. Feeling energy flowing up to the head, energizing your brain. Feeling energy flowing down the arms to the tips of the fingers. Feeling energy flowing down the torso, energizing vital organs. Feeling energy flowing down your legs to the tips of the toes. The whole body re-energized, rejuvenated with life force energy. And now starting to make small movements of your fingers and toes, bringing the body back to life again. Perhaps reaching the arms overhead, having a nice big stretch out. And then slowly rolling over onto one side, just resting here for a moment or two. And whenever you're ready, very slowly coming back up into sitting. And then finishing up with a little bit of a self-massage. So you might want to give the hands a rub to create a bit of heat. Placing the hands over the face, gently massaging fingertips over the face and the head and the neck and shoulders. And down the back, legs, knees, ankles, soles of the feet and the toes. And then turning the palms to face up, inhaling hands together, bringing all the goodness of your yoga practice into your heart center. And wishing you a very happy and healthy week ahead. Namaste. Thank you.